Okay, we're rolling.
All right, this is a home interview, Erin, New York. It is the 18th of May, 2006, approximately 9:45 a.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russell. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Warren J. Ingham. And the place of birth was Waverly, New York.
All right, and when?
April 8th, 1924.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I graduated from high school.
Okay. Do you remember where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, we lived on a farm because of the Depression. We had moved out on the farm, and we just came in for breakfast like 7:30 in the morning.
All right, let's start again.
All right, this is a home interview. We're in New York. It is the 18th of May, 2006, approximately 9:45 a.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russell. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Warren J. Ingham, and I was born in Waverly, New York, April 8th, 1924.
Okay, what was your educational background prior to entering
I
service?
graduated from Waverly High School.
Okay. Could you tell me where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
It was at home at outside of Waverly, New York, and we came in from the morning work on the farm and heard it on the radio about 7:30 in the morning.
Okay, how did you feel when you heard about this? What was your reaction?
I wanted to go into service then, but the problem was that I was not quite 18 and also a senior in Waverly High School, and the principal of the high school and my father said, "You're not going any place till you graduate."
Okay. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted. I probably would have been, drafted anyway, but at first they said you couldn't enlist, and then they freed up some of the enlistments, and so I enlisted. And the only difference in the thing was that you had a different serial number, because once you signed that paper, you went where they wanted to send you. When we got inducted and went to Fort Niagara, the first disillusion we had is about half of the guys that went with me went to the infantry in Fort Benning, Georgia, and they'd all signed up for the Army Air Corps.
No.
Were they friends of yours from school, or?
Some of them, yes. Okay. And they were a large portion of them from the Elmira area here by the city, because there was more, of course, to draw from there.
Why did you pick the Army Air Corps?
Well, I originally intended to enlist in the Navy, but the Navy recruiter was quite belligerent when I went to enlist, and so I went down the hall, and the Army recruiter was there, and he said, "You're about the right size for the Army Air Corps. You might want to join that." And he said that the good part about it is that if you fly and you get back from the mission or wherever they've sent you, you've got a decent place to sleep and better food. So that sounded good to me, and that's how I come to sign for that.
Did you ever have an interest in flying, or?
Some, of course. Once I got in, and we took basic training in Atlantic City, New Jersey. They had all of the hotels down in Atlantic City, and when we got done there, anybody that was in the Army Air Corps at that time, they sent you to airplane mechanic school, because they said no matter what you did, you might have to repair your own plane. So they wanted you to have some basics of how to do that type of work.
Where did you go for that?
Seymour Johnson Field, North Carolina.
Okay.
How long was that school?
That was, well, that was about almost 3 months.
And what type of aircraft did you work on?
Well, we worked on several different kind, but the one, an A-20, we took the engine all apart and rebuilt it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got the thing rebuilt, mounted it on the airplane, and the airplane was flyable, so the colonel of the base always flew that plane after they'd taken the engine apart and put it back together. And he first asked for volunteers, and they were all lined up. Nobody volunteered, and he walked down the line, and I was one of the shorter ones and on the end of the line, and he said to me, "You're going with me." And so that's the first time I got to fly.
How'd you feel when you went up?
Well, I was a little nervous, but he said to calm down. He said, "If you got faith in your work, we don't have any problem."
Now, did you get to sit in the co-pilot seat?
Yes, yeah. And it was a short flight, but just enough to check the engine out and make sure it was, properly put together.
Uh-huh.
Okay, after you were in North Carolina, where did you go from there?
Fort Myers, Florida Gunnery School.
Mm-hmm.
While I was at Seymour Johnson Field, I took the Air Force cadet exam, and there was a lot of math on it, and I got, about a 94, and it was 93 point something, and they called me to headquarters, and I thought, I'm going to cadet, I'm going to be a pilot, and I had hopes of flying the P-47, but when I got up there, they said, we think you cheated, and so you got to take it over. We're going to give it to you individually, and there'll be 3 people in the room with you. So they did that, and I raised it 1/10 of a point, and then they called all 4 of us in and said, we don't understand this. Did he have stuff written on his wrist or someplace? Because we got college students that's had 2 years of college. They're not getting marks like this. But they all, said that, no, that's his mark. He did all right. But then they wanted volunteers for gunnery school, and you could fly 6 weeks of that. You were ready to fly, so you had to volunteer because they wouldn't take it if you didn't. And that's when I volunteered and went to Fort Myers Gunnery School in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there we went to, actually Pyle, Texas for phase training to go to Europe.
Okay, when did you hook up with the crew?
September of 1943,
Okay, where was that?
Pyle, Texas.
In Texas, okay. Did you get a plane at that time, or?
We had a plane, it was, everybody flew them. They had several of them, but I mean, everybody flew the same ones. They didn't have, you didn't have your own plane.
Did you train strictly on B-17s?
Yes. Although they could, switch you if they wanted to, and everybody was thinking that they were maybe going to get switched to a B-24. The outset, they had planned on sending us to the Pacific, but because there was a greater need in Europe, they sent, when we left to go across, we went to Europe.
How did you cross to
We
England?
went to Grand Island, Nebraska, picked up a new airplane, and we flew it across. It was like a car. The one that we had was a lemon, and we got as far as Goose Bay, Labrador, and the electrical system had quit on us, and we landed there. And it was, when we landed there, it was in the first part of January of 1944, and the snow was blown up higher than the tail on the B-17, and it was 45 below zero when we got on the ground. And they repaired it at night. We asked, when they see how cold it was, if we could leave early in the morning. They said, whenever you want to go. Well, we got up 5 o'clock, not realizing that we weren't gonna go anyplace, and we tried to start the plane that wouldn't start because they used 90 weight oil in them, and when you went to start it, they just wouldn't turn over.
Must have been like tar.
Yes, it was, and then about 8 o'clock, we were over at the mess hall to eat breakfast, and the ground crew was there. They said, "Oh, you're still here, huh? We thought you would be." He says, "We'll fix you up when we get done here," and they put heaters on the exhaust and had the plane up, and then they started, and then we went from there to Iceland and had to land again with the same problem. And on the way to Iceland, it was, below us, we were flying about a little under 10,000 feet because they didn't want to use oxygen going over, and it was cloud covered and you couldn't see anything. It was like flying in the clouds most of the time, and we had to land, and the pilot said, "We gotta put it down because this will never make England without any electric, you know." So we called and they said, "Well, if you've got a good navigator, you shouldn't have any trouble getting in here." And so, you know, the B-17, the way the navigator had to tell where you were at to get a fix on it, they used the sextant and got a fix on the star, and that's the way they told where you were. And he worked on that a few minutes, and he said to the pilot, "Drop down right now." And he said, "When we get down where you can see, we shouldn't be lined right up with the runway." And sure enough, we were. We came down through the clouds, and he had us right on course.
Now, did you have an electrical suit to keep warm?
After we got in England, before that, we wore them sheepskin lined ones. And they were so bulky that when you got in that ball turret, you couldn't hardly move because there's not much room in it anyway. And even being small, and I only weighed about 130, then it would just, you know, you were jammed in there. But when we got in England, yes, we got electric heated suit.
Now, they hadn't fixed your electrical problem, or?
They, whatever was wrong with it, they, no, because about the time we landed in England, it had quit again. I don't know whether it was in the wiring or what, but they just couldn't seem to get to the bottom of it. But we left that plane at what they called a sub-depot, and I'm sure they corrected it somehow because they wouldn't, the ones that we flew over didn't go to the base with you. They kept them at the sub-depot, and they went over it.
Now, where were you assigned in England?
Bury St. Edmund, Ruffingham Air Base. It was about 20 miles east of Cambridge and about 60 miles north and a little bit west of London.
When you got there, did you pick up a plane to use at that point?
We, well, first thing they did was send us out to what they call the wash and made us fire at with a 50 caliber machine gun that was set on a tripod like your camera here, and you fired at a tow target that they had running back and forth across to make sure that you were, you know, sharp on leading and hitting a target with it. And then we went down to the base, and when we got to the base, when you first got there, you flew whatever plane was available. The first mission you went on, you went with a seasoned crew. And of course, there was a lot of being real nervous there because first of all, you didn't know, they didn't know you and you didn't know them. And so, you know, they were not too sure how good you were going to be, and you didn't know what to expect from them.
Okay. Once you got back though, were you finally assigned a plane?
We, not until after the 12th mission, we became a lead crew, and then they gave us a plane of our own, and that's when we...
Okay, and the other ones then you rotated
Yes.
the plane then, okay.
Yes.
Did you name the plane?
Yes, it was, we named it the Fortress Joker. It had a clown's head on each side of the nose. And then of course as you went on when you come back from a mission, if you made it back, they always painted a bomb on the, you know, side of them for each mission they went on.
Did you decorate your jacket at all?
Did I what?
Decorate your jacket at all?
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of them,
Yeah.
what was on yours?
Well, it had that clown on it, and then it had a B-17 on the back with the bombs coming down. And, well, unfortunately, my marriage broke up and that became missing, so I don't have that, or I'd give it to you.
Yeah. So, okay, who came up with that name and why? Do you remember?
Well, we had several names, but then the pilot said, you know, you got to have something decent, because they come up with various ladies' names that weren't too appropriate, and he just got married before we went across, and he said it's got to be something decent, we can't have that, so that's how we come up with the Joker. He suggested we looked at a replica of one of them clowns' head, and we decided that'd be okay.
Okay, when was your first mission?
April 14th of 1944. No, April, I believe it's April 14th.
Could you describe your feelings? What was the purpose of the mission?
Well, the first one we went on was into France, I believe, and it was not too long a mission, but, well, you're nervous because, and afraid. I mean, there's no use lying about it. There's some afraid there, but you know, the worst part about it was when you went on the bomb run. When they started in with that northern bomb site, you had to go in level. You couldn't do any evasive action of any kind. So that anti-aircraft was deadly accurate. The Germans had a lot of practice, and they could put them right up where you were.
How many missions did you fly total?
33. We were supposed to do 25 when we started out, but after we became lead crew, they kept adding on, because we were one of the visual crew that used that northern bomb site. They'd come out with that, they called it a Mickey, it was like a radar that they were using, and but the bomb site was more accurate than that because of the way it was made, and the experience they'd had with it. And our bombardier was deadly accurate. He'd drop a wing of planes, 66 planes, in a 500-foot circle from 23,000 feet.
What were most of your targets?
Well, factories and them oil storage depots and utility, where the utilities were, where there was electric, you know, hydroelectric plants and that type of thing. And then when they started building those V2 rockets, we'd attack them bases where they were building them, the factories where they were building them. And the one on the 28th of April, we got, our pilot and co-pilot got wounded. The co-pilot couldn't fly after that, and an 88 millimeter broke right there by the cockpit, and he had 22 holes in his stomach, and he lived.
Well, he was able to bring it back?
Well, they couldn't fly it, but the bombardier flew it
Bombardier
back.
flew it,
Yes, yeah.
Was anyone else injured in the?
The pilot got a neck injury in the back from the shrapnel off of that same shot that got him, and it, you know, kind of, well, it hit those cords back there and made him fuzzy. He was kind of numb, and we got back to the base. The air control tower man said, "You can't. That's not the pilot. You can't land that plane." And he said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" We were firing red flares because you did that when you had wounded aboard. He said, "What do you want me to do? You want me to land it, or you want one of the gunners?" And he says, "What do you mean?" He said, "That's all we got." We knew how to fly the plane in the air because the pilot taught us to fly it in the air, and the one thing that they always told us, that if there's anybody alive, bring the plane back. We have more men, but we don't have more planes.
What kind of damage was there to the cockpit? Was all the glass broken?
The side had it had a hole in it where that broke, and then it, through the other part of the skin on it, it looked something like a sieve where then shrapnel had exploded, you know, and cut through the sides of it.
Was there any electrical damage or anything to the plane, or
No,
just?
no, it didn't hit any of the controls. We were real lucky there.
So the bombardier landed it okay then?
Oh yes, fine. Yeah, we got down in good shape.
Are there any other missions that stand out?
Yeah, probably the one that where I thought we were done for was mission over Berlin, and there was a lot of aircraft, and we got hit pretty good with that. And then we came off the target, and there was clouds. We came out of the clouds, and outside of the clouds was ME-109s and FW-190s, and boy, they really ripped us apart. We lost 10. We had 11 planes from our squadron. We lost 10 of them, and then we had to hook on with another group that was following us behind, and we didn't know they hadn't made the bomb run yet, so we made the second run over Berlin with them, and then we came home with that group.
Would you say those were the April raids on Berlin?
Yes,
Yeah, those are some of
yes.
the. So were they? Do you think some of the most difficult missions you flew then?
Yeah, Berlin was, of course. Then that one that I told you about where the pilot and co-pilot got shot, that was supposed to be an easy run with about just a little over 4 hours flying time to that target where they were making those V2 rockets. We called them buzz bombs, and we were gonna, you know, well, we did bomb that factory, but they got us too. And then we had one mission that was, we called it a grocery mission. We dropped supplies to the French underground down in the French Alps, and that B-17, you know, the cruising speed on that's about 190 miles an hour, which is not very fast in today's age, but when we came over the top of that mountain, we were like about 1,000 feet off the ground to drop these supplies with a parachute from the bomb bays, and then we swung around and come back over to see if they were being picked up.
Did you fly in support of the D-Day?
Yes.
What were your missions then?
Well,
Rail areas and.
the 5th of the morning, or the day before the mission, we were bombing that coast along the French. But you have to remember that the Germans had concrete pillboxes there that were several feet thick of concrete, and the bombs that the general purpose bomb would go down in that a little, but it would only make, you know, dents in it. It would it wouldn't blow them out of there, and that's the one bad part about it. And then General McNair there got killed because the B-25s were bombing a target of German tanks, and they misjudged the smoke pots that they put out to line the target out and dropped them on their own troops. So they grounded them for a few days, and we bombed them from about 10,000 feet for the ground troops, for them tanks. And if the Germans had been, you know, looking for us, they could have easily tilted the guns on those, tilted those tanks so that they would fire it up and probably blow us out of the sky, because 10,000 feet going at that speed with them, they could have hit you easy with them guns that were on a tank.
Now, in a typical mission, could you describe what time did you get up in the morning and so on?
Well, we got up, they generally wake you about 4 or 4:30, and then you'd go and have breakfast. And the gunners, the only time we went to the briefing room was actually twice. That one mission to Berlin, and then when the invasion was, because you had the guns had to all be put, the insides of the guns, the 50 caliber guns had to be put in the airplane. You had to assemble them in there. So the gunners would put all of the guns in, and then the pilot, co-pilot, navigator, radio man, and bombardier would go to the briefing, and when they come out, they'd tell us where we were going, and we would have the guns already in place, and the flight engineer would pre-flight the engines before they got out there, so when they got out, we were ready. And then when going on a mission, you lined up on the runway, and one took off every 30 seconds. Once you started down the runway, if you couldn't get up, you had to get out of the way, because there was one right behind you.
Now, did you wear your flak jacket, or did you sit on it? Or?
I couldn't wear one.
Oh yeah, right, you're in the ball turret when you were out of it.
The one good part about that ball turret was that, like anti-aircraft, most of it was so rounding would bounce off from it. And the one time, the one mission, I don't remember exactly which one that was, but a piece of anti-aircraft bounced off from it, and it went through the seat where the radio man would normally sit. Something went wrong with the radio unit, and we always carried a spare. And he was up changing that, and that went right through the seat. If he'd been sitting in the chair, he would have got hit in the rear end, because that went right through the side of it and went over into the side of the fuselage on one of those aluminum ribs that went up around to hold the skin on, and lodged there, and we took it out. It was about 2 inches long and about maybe a ½ inch, thick, so it would have done a pretty good job.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I'm gonna fix it so you can't get out if that happens again.
Now, could you get out of the ball turret by yourself?
No, not actually, no, because they had a fastener on the outside as well as the inside.
So someone had to crank you out?
Yeah, it had you had to turn it over so the guns were straight down, and then that little trap door that you got in would be up on top, and you come up inside of the plane.
Now, as a mechanic, were there any major problems with the plane, or?
No, because when we got over there, they had ground crews, and the ground crew, did all the maintenance on them. They would patch them, them flak holes in them, and the small ones, if they were shot up, quite bad, they would patch them with caulking to get till they could get more time to put patches on them. But they would work all night to get them ready to go the next day again.
Now, when the pilot and the co-pilot were injured like that, was that the Fortress Joker that was hit like that?
No, that was before that.
Were they able to repair that plane so it could fly?
Yes, yeah.
That's amazing.
And one thing they did is, like when we were in phase training here, if something went wrong with the engine, they generally change the engine and put one on from the factory. But over there, they rebuilt them. It was very seldom that they put a new engine on. The only time they did that I know of was we went to Friedrichshafen, Germany, which was right on the border of Switzerland. You could look right into Switzerland, and we got a direct hit on the right inboard engine, and it sheared the propeller off the engine. And we came home on 3 engines. We had a command pilot with us that said, well, we're in range of being interned for the war if we land down there. If you don't think this plane will take us home, we might better land down there. But our pilot said, no, we have orders to, if the plane will fly, to bring it back. And he said, there's no reason this won't go back on 3 engines, and it did. It come in fine.
Did you yourself ever shoot down Any German planes?
It's
that
kinda
you know
hard to
of?
say, because, you know, they flew in
Right,
close, wing to wing, and what they got, so they did is, if they thought your plane was the closest one to it, they'd credit the plane with it. They quit allowing them to assign it to an individual, because it created a lot of dissension, you know, because it could have been somebody else. You couldn't really be sure that you were the only one that hit it.
did you ever see a jet?
Yeah, but we didn't know what they were, because we hadn't seen anything like that.
What was your reaction when you saw it?
Oh my God, we didn't know what it was. We thought they'd come up with something that maybe we were gonna have trouble with, but what really, in about the first part of August of 1944, we had air superiority. Them P-51s went with us to the target, and and then we blew up so much of the oil storage that they had no fuel to get them off the ground with, and then them P-51s would drop off and go down and strafe them on the ground and blow up their planes. So it got so they couldn't put any fighter planes in the air, but the anti-aircraft was still pretty accurate in a lot of it.
Yeah, when was your last mission?
I think the 13th of September, 1944.
What was your, did you have much contact with the English people while you were there?
Yeah, quite a bit. We'd get a 3-day pass once in a while, and then you'd either go to London or, well, when they started sending those buzz bombs over, we didn't get down there anymore. We'd go to like Liverpool or one of them other places that were smaller, where it was a little safer. And we went back there. The 94th went back to Bury St. Edmund in 1984, a whole bunch of us, and going over, we were wondering how we'd be received, because, you know, we weren't the best citizens in the world when we were over there. They had their liquor rations came in on Tuesday, and we'd go down. This base had, you know, several thousand people there, and we'd go downtown and drink up their allotment, and we wouldn't have any. And we thought, you know, maybe these people won't be too glad to see us, but they were real friendly. They had a parade for us, and they had an English tea for us in the afternoon and everything. They were just really fine. They were nice people. The English people were good people. They were going without a lot of things, because they just, you know, with all that was going on and the Germans bombing them and that, they just didn't have access to a lot of stuff.
Now, after you had your final mission, what did you do?
Well, we had to wait. They sent us back. The war hadn't ended yet, and they
Yes,
sent us
right.
back on a boat, and we came in the convoy. We had 1,500 prisoners of war on the boat coming back. We had to guard them, and then we were 23 days on the water. And, well, they tried to come the North Atlantic in October. That was pretty rough, and we spent one whole day going no place. That boat would bob up and down like a cork in them waves, and they got out of there, and we came down through the Azores and in that way. It was quite a sight when you come up by that Statue of Liberty. And then we got a 30-day leave.
Okay.
And then went back. I went back to Richmond, Virginia, and they said, well, you're not going to see any more combat. And so they sent us, well, I went to Amarillo, Texas, and they said, we don't have anything for you here, so they sent me to Chinook Field, Illinois. Got up there, and they said, well, we're going to use you as an instructor. And I said, oh, okay, that's all right. So about a week, I guess, after I got up there, they said, I want to see you up to headquarters. And they went up there, and they said, we got a set of orders for you. You're going to Kingman, Arizona for retraining on the guns for B-29. And then from there we went to Biggs Field, El Paso, Texas, went on a crew, and I was close to going to Guam, but then they decided they were gonna, you know, drop that atomic bomb. Only we didn't know what it was, but they decided they were gonna use what they thought would end the war, and so anybody who'd been to Europe, they grounded. They put about 200 of us down on the lower end of the base. President Truman came there. He'd been up in New Mexico where they tested that, and said he didn't expect we'd see any more combat. And then of course they dropped that, and when they dropped the second one, well, then they surrendered. And then,
What were your feelings when you heard about the atomic bombs being dropped?
oh God, we were happy because we figured that, you know, you keep getting shot at, you're not going to survive either.
Well, being in bombers, what did you think when you heard about the power of this single bomb? What were your,
Oh,
could
it's
you
unreal.
comprehend it, or?
Yeah, you just flabbergasted, you know, because you never saw anything like that. Because them bombs that we dropped, well, I could see them, you know, when they hit the target, and I mean, they made an explosion, but nothing like that. I mean, that just devastated everything.
Now, did you fly in B-29s at all in training?
In training, yes.
Yeah, what did you think of the B-29?
Well, they were a nice plane, but they were not as, I don't think they would have lasted in Europe with anti-aircraft as good as the B-17 did, because they were so huge that there was more surface for them to hit, and they just didn't seem like they flew as well as the B-17.
Were they faster than the B-17?
Yes, they were.
Do you remember where you were when President Roosevelt died?
I think I might have been at Chinook Field, Illinois.
Did you have a reaction when you heard about that?
Well, yeah, because you felt it was a big loss, you know, because they had ended that well, Germany hadn't totally surrendered yet, and then you had, you know, the Pacific too going on, and you just wondered what was going to happen with him gone, you know.
Okay. When were you discharged?
September 23rd, 1945. I had a lot of points from being, you know, over across and that, so it was one of the first ones out.
Did you ever make use of the GI Bill?
No. No, I really didn't. I had a friend that was kind of a mentor in school, and he wanted me to go to Cornell University, but I was afraid I wouldn't make it up there, and so I didn't go.
How about the 5220 Club?
I got some of that, but I went to work, and then I went to work for what was part of Bendix here in Elmira for a while, but that didn't work out too well. In 3 months' time, I got laid off 3 times, and then I got a job with the Richfield Oil Corporation. I thought, oh, now I'm all set. And then they merged with Atlantic, and I wasn't part of the merger. So from there I went, I had to work construction a little while because there wasn't any work, but then I got in the post office, and I stayed there 31 years.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Yeah, I belonged to American Legion and Veterans of Foreign Wars. I was real fortunate. I never got, you know, wounded in any way. I come out of it in good shape.
Do you belong to the 8th Air Force Association?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any photographs? I see there's some over on the wall. If I can turn this off, if you want to get them and bring them over.
Taken in Pyote, Texas, when we finished phase training.
Now, could you point out the pilot and the co-pilot? Now, they didn't fly with you all the missions then if they were so seriously wounded, correct?
The co-pilot didn't. The pilot flew all of them.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And whereabouts are you in that photo?
Right here.
Now, have you kept in contact with any of these fellas?
Yes, there's the co-pilot that got shot up the first one that we had is still alive.
Wow.
And then the flight engineer is in Valdosta, Florida, and the one gunner is in Centerville, Iowa. And the radio man, which is, let's see, I'm looking at that. Yeah. Oh, right here. Radio man was lost over the flying hump over China. He went from, when they come from Europe, they were short radio people, and they sent him on the C-47, and the plane, the whole crew was lost.
Okay.
Now, could you hold up the single photograph of yourself that's on the side there and tell us when and where that was taken, if you...
This one was taken in Waverly, New York, after I come back from Europe. That would have been in the fall of 1944.
Now, what rank were you at that point?
Staff sergeant.
Now,
Okay.
you said you received 4 Bronze Stars? Or several Bronze Stars?
Yeah, 4 Bronze
Four
Stars
bronze.
for that European theater of operation, and then I had 5 Air Medals and Distinguished Flying Cross. And of course, New York State issued
Yes.
that.
Conspicuous Service Cross?
Yes,
Now, could you hold up your plane? Now, what model was that?
this one is a B-17G.
And that's what you flew?
Yes, that was our own plane that we had with our, I mean, not our own plane, but the one we had the Fortress choker on. Unfortunately, I didn't have a camera that.
I'm getting a little glare. Can you just tilt that a little? Yeah, that's good right there. Okay. All right, got it.
Now, did you have that thing you had with you had the drawing of the drawing that was on your plane, the Fortress Joker?
Oh, yeah.
Joker on your plane. Was there someone on the base that painted
Yes,
it?
it was
Or?
one of the ground crew. I can't remember his name, but he did. He painted all of those. That was one of his jobs.
Okay, great. We got it.
Now, how do you think your time in the service changed or had an effect on your life?
Oh, I think that made me a lot more appreciative of the country, and also you grew up quick. You became a man, so to speak, before, you know, probably before your time, because it wasn't a bad experience. I never disliked being in there. I didn't want to make a career out of it, because they said if I would stay that I could go take this pilot's training, but you had to sign for 6 years, and I didn't want to do that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.
Okay,